Greetings, Minecrafters, and welcome to episode 10 Mindset. Today, we're going to discuss how important it is to have an awareness of our own mindset and also the different types of mindsets. Then, of course, we will discuss how to shift out of this, out of a mindset that may no longer be working for us to something that's a little more positive and more fitting to our lives. And certainly when discussing mindset, there is no better place to start than with the work of Carol Dweck. And right out of the gate, she starts talking about our belief system and that whether we're aware of our beliefs or we are unaware of our beliefs, these have so much to do with what we want and also whether we are actually successful in achieving what we want. She says that these beliefs are not only a large part of our life, but that they permeate every aspect of our lives. Carol starts out by talking about way back when she was just getting started as a young researcher, and something happened that was life-changing for her. She talks about how intrigued she was with how people, work through failures. And she actually says she was obsessed with how people, deal with failures. And so she decided to observe students and how they managed problem solving and their failures. With this particular research project, Carol brought the kids in one at a time at their school and gave them a series of puzzles to do. And the first one started out, rather easy for them to figure out. After the first round of kind of easier puzzles, Carol introduced some more challenging, tougher puzzles. And she watched them as they she said, kind of grunted and perspired a bit. And while they, tried to strategize, how to get around this new challenge or through this new challenge. Obviously Carol expected that, the kids would respond differently, obviously. And then she talks about landing on something she just absolutely did not expect. Then she says, straight out of her book Mindset, actually, then Carol says, confronted with the hard puzzles, one 10-year-old boy pulled up his chair, rubbed his hands together, smacked his lips, and cried out, "I love a challenge." Another, sweating away on these puzzles, looked up with a pleased expression and said with authority, I was hoping this would be informative. Then Carol talks about wondering what's wrong with these kids. She just wondered what's going on here. And then she says, I always thought you coped with failure or you didn't cope with failure. I never thought anyone loved failure. Were these alien children or were they onto something? And then she talks about how, we all have role models and people who point us, in the right direction at a critical moment in our lives and such. And then she goes on to say that these kids became her role models. They obviously knew something I didn't, she says, and I was determined to figure it out, to understand the kind of mindset that could turn a failure into a gift. And what's truly amazing here, as Carol says, is that the kids not only weren't discouraged by failure, they didn't even think they were failing. They thought they were learning. And of course, many of us grow up hearing things like, your sister's the smart one in the family, or you're the athletic one in the family, or he's the artistic one in the family. Like the heavens parted and, they won the winning lottery ticket for athleticism or intelligence or art, being an artist. These students had a whole different perspective on things, which is that intellectual skills could actually be cultivated by effort. I think there are a whole lot of, people out there who do believe that these personality or character traits are etched in stone. Like, you're smart or you're not, you're an artist or you're not, you're good at math or you're not. And then, Carol talks about this mentality of thinking, if I could just arrange successes and avoid failures, at all costs, that I can stay smart. You know, struggles, mistakes, and perseverance were just not part of this picture. And sort of where our discussion is going right now is the differences between a fixed mindset and what Carol also terms a growth mindset. They're very inherent differences that kind of, integrate into our belief system and have a whole lot to do with how we approach problem solving and, relationships and our lives and how we deal with mental health issues, how we, pursue education and learn, just all of it. It's right. Our mindset is really a huge part of our hard drive. And this also kind of threads together what we've been talking about, as one of the main themes all the way through, and I have said in earlier episodes that I'm a huge fan of skill sets versus, raw talents that kind of, fell from the heavens, or, when the backstroke in a really great genetic pool, something like that. I'm a very big fan of skill sets because this means we can kind of take ownership. We can take control. We can grab our autonomy by making an effort to, improve at whatever it is we're trying to improve at. So the fixed mindset leans very heavily on the belief that these traits are permanent. We are smart or we're not. Again, we're athletic or we're not. Ba, 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 ba. And putting in effort isn't going to change that. We kind of support it by and reinforce it by getting a good grade on a math test or whatever. It just reinforces, okay, this is true. I am smart or I am good at math. But what happens when we don't do well on that test or we, fail at something? What is the message that we're bringing inside the living room, as I like to say to my kids and also my students? We're bringing it in, we're internalizing it. What does that do for us when we fail, when our external world is telling us that we're supposed to be smart or athletic? And what happens when we don't meet that bar? What are the consequences for our self-esteem and self-image? So the fixed mindset then involves believing that our own, qualities, character traits, whatever, they're etched in stone. And this then kind of creates this urgency within us to have to just keep proving that to ourselves and the world and whomever. Carol then introduces us to another type of mindset, which isn't sort of based upon the cards we've been dealt, or the poker hand we've been dealt. She says in her book Mindset, there's another mindset in which these traits are not simply a hand you're dealt and have to live with, always trying to convince yourself and others that you have a royal flush when you're secretly worried it's a pair of tens. In this mindset, the hand you're dealt is just a starting point for development. The growth mindset is based on the belief that your basic qualities are things you can cultivate through your efforts, your strategies, and help from others. Although people may differ in every which way, in their initial talents and aptitudes, interests, or temperaments, everyone can change and grow through application and experience. Then I really like this. Carol Dweck talks about when we, shift our mindset, which we can do, despite what many people out there think, is that we enter a new world. And she says that when in one world, the world of fixed traits, success is about proving you're smart or talented. It's about validating yourself, constantly. Think of the, pressure and stress with that. It sounds exhausting to me. In the other world, of changing qualities or growth mindset, it's about stretching yourself to learn something new and developing yourself. So, kind of on planet fixed mindset, failure is perceived as a setback, sometimes a major setback, and effort is perceived as a bad thing and often just unnecessary. On planet fixed mindset, it's kind of like failure and effort are perceived as, kind of undermining what you believe to be true about yourself. If you have to put in effort or you fail at something, well, what you believe in your hard drive, being smart or artistic or athletic or whatever, isn't true. And getting that bad grade or not getting the promotion or losing your job or whatever means you just weren't as talented as you really thought you were. And that you're not upholding or fulfilling this talent that, fell down from the heavens. And then we think of some of the, famous quote unquote failures out there. I'm sure many of you are aware. Michael Jordan was cut from his high school basketball team, if you can imagine. And then Walt Disney was fired from a newspaper for not having any imagination or original ideas. And that's just so nuts. And then, as many of my listeners know, Oprah is one of my closest friends. She just isn't aware. I absolutely love Oprah, and she got the axe from a television network, early on. And I mean, just oh my gosh, saying something to the effect that she wasn't fit for television. And just imagine that. And then we have Dr. Seuss, whose first book was rejected by 27 publishers. So this goes back to consequences and kind of how we first started out the discussion. When Carol Dweck asked, as far as the fixed mindset or the growth mindset, whether you're an etched in stone, talents person, or you're a I can cultivate and improve with effort person, what are the consequences to our lives with each of these mindsets? So, with those 4 examples of quote unquote famous failures, just imagine if, let's say, Dr. Seuss gave up, on after the rejection, and just, had the message of a fixed mindset saying, I guess I'm a failure. I'm not really the writer everyone's telling me I am, and gives up. Because perseverance is very much part of the growth mindset. And all 4 of those examples, those people persevered. They kept getting up. They had bounced back, and they kept putting in effort and more effort and more effort and making choices to keep going forward rather than being, locked in to this fixed mindset belief system. So let's shift over to how this affects us in other areas of our lives. I think this is really important. So let's start with relationships. Just think about how this can work with a partner. Someone with a fixed mindset, right, thinks that we're meant to be or we're not. And that, or if this is meant to be, then this relationship just shouldn't take much, if any, effort. And I think any of you out there have been in a long-term relationship certainly know, how much work it is. I'm actually heading into 30 years of, well, if he plays his cards right, 30 years of marriage this August. And I will tell you, I love my husband. He's my best friend in the world. And there are times when I would love to throw a frying pan at him, head on. Things take work. We definitely don't always agree. And if we did, quite honestly, that'd be really, really boring and maybe even irritating. Relationships, any kind of relationships, take lots of effort, whether it's being a good parent, being a best friend, or being a good partner. It all takes effort. Obviously we're all very, human beings are complex. And also, anyone who's been in a long-term relationship understands that this shifts. It's not always even. There might even be days, if not weeks, where it's more, giving or caretaking or however you want to say on the one partner's end. And then that makes a shift, when you're the one who's in need, or the best friendship or whatever. But etched in stone, relationships usually are not. The growth mindset person in a relationship is going to see, a gigantic argument or, whatever, has a chance to grow and get closer. I don't want to just paint, a rose-colored, filter with this, because we all know arguments can be ugly and hurtful, lots of, tears and, obviously, and at the same time, when we kind of get past all that mud and ugliness and actually allow ourselves to be vulnerable, the strength that comes out of that can obviously bring people even closer together than they were before, making them even stronger than they were before. And this is also true for being a good parent. As mentioned in earlier episodes, my husband and I, we have 5 amazing young adult children, and I'd like to think we were good parents. No one's perfect, not a bar any of us can reach. There's no point in, kind of setting it there, right? And the growth mindset, when a parent with a growth mindset is going to look at when we do make mistakes, which we absolutely do for sure, we look at that as, wow, maybe I didn't listen to the teenager, maybe, this, maybe that, maybe I made a wrong judgment call about the family where our child just went to play and da 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 da, whatever, fill in the blank with the mistake, or I didn't want them to play this sport or whatever. And we look back and like, wow, I so could have done that differently. And since we can't wind the clocks backwards, obviously, a parent with a growth mindset is going to say, okay, I really screwed up. Whether we have this conversation with the child is a whole different story, because that depends on developmental, age and all that stuff. But maybe with the partner, if there's a partner, or with a best friend, if there is no partner or whatever. But to have that conversation in our head of what I could have done differently. And if something comes up like this again, what are some thoughts and maybe some, kind of supports I can put in place to maybe learn from this, grow from this, and become an even better parent, where I can navigate teenager land a little better, the next time. I can listen better, whatever it is. Oh, and this growth mindset thinking for a parent is, obviously far away from the fixed mindset parent who would just think, oh, well, so and so who I socialize, she's just a better mother than I am. Well, you can change that. It's not like you got the winning lottery ticket for being a good mother. You can change that. Or if it's just because, I grew up without any role models for what it means to be a good parent. Okay, maybe that's true. And no one's, certainly not going to validate that or anything like that. And at the same time, it's an effort thing. Maybe you did not have, good role models. So here's the thing. You can start that now and become your own model, your own role model. And seek out supports in that way of people you do perceive to be good parents, and ask them how they do things. Or perhaps there are a lot of books out there. There are also parent education classes. There are all kinds of ways to start being a good parent. And again, I'm very into the progress, not perfection thing. So if we can, again, like we said earlier with mindfulness, we can be more mindful today than we were yesterday, we are successful. If we're a better parent today than we were yesterday, we are absolutely successful. If we make one better parenting decision this afternoon than we did this morning, we are successful. And this is, part of the growth mindset. The type of mindset we have also plays a tremendous role in how we handle mental health issues. So I'm going to say a disclaimer here. Let's say with depression, we'll talk about this one. Obviously, this is complicated. There are genetics involved and neurotransmitters involved and situational factors involved. And no one's saying that this is easy. I'm definitely not saying it's easy. And at the same time, I am sure that someone with a growth mindset is going to be able to manage their depression far better than someone with a fixed mindset. As this person has kind of brought this label right into their living room, as we said. It's become part of their hard drive. Someone with a fixed mindset is going to identify with their depression. I am depressed, like made me do this. My depression, it's my depression that did this. This is because of my depression. The person with a growth mindset, though they may use some of those words, are going to really have more of an outlook of this depression is something I manage. And once again, no one is saying this is easy. Not saying that at all. And by the same token, the person managing depression with a growth mindset outlook is going to see, these sort of, speed bumps and setbacks along the way that depression can bring, will be more apt to look at these as challenges and maybe even a catalyst to start making some changes. Let's say such as exercise, such as adding structure to one's day, such as making a job switch, nutrition stuff, all these different changes that somebody can do. Definitely seeking out professional help. The person with a growth mindset is going to say, okay, this is what's going on with me right now. It's hard and awful. I don't like it. And here's the thing, I don't like how I'm thinking, feeling, and behaving. And I'd like to, kind of begin to visualize myself in a different place. I'd like to improve my life circumstances. Once again, this is complex. And at the same point, the growth mindset person managing depression will begin to set, even if they're the smallest goals, maybe seemingly small goals to other people, right? Within that person's, cognitive world, these might be huge steps. Even if it's just starting to walk in the morning, maybe just getting up in the morning. And I'm certainly not making light of that, because anyone who's ever experienced, moderate to severe depression knows that just getting out of bed can be the biggest challenge in the world for them. And the growth mindset person, what may be more apt to kind of force it, to set the bar at, okay, maybe it's partway through the first day, and the next day they say, okay, I'm setting my alarm. I'm setting my alarm. So tomorrow I'm getting up at 7 o'clock in the morning, and I'm going to go for a walk to wherever. Again, whereas the fixed mindset person is identifying with this label of depression and believing that it's inherent and permanent. Now, I think a lot of you out there who've been listening also are aware of how much I love the brain, right? That's what I study for my doctoral degree, which is in cognitive psychology and instruction. I just absolutely could talk about the brain all day long and not have one bored minute. So it's so cool. Again, is that these mindsets actually show up, can be seen in an fMRI. And Carol Dweck talks about the brainwave lab at Columbia University, and there are participants in there that they measured for the mindsets. And she says that as the participants answered hard questions and got feedback, we were curious about when their brain waves would show them to be interested and attentive. Well, here, listen to this. People with a fixed mindset were only interested when the feedback reflected on their ability. Their brain waves showed them paying close attention when they were told whether their answers were right or wrong. But when they were presented with information that could help them learn, there was no sign of interest. Even when they got an answer wrong, they were not interested in learning what the right answer was. Only people with a growth mindset paid close attention to the information that could stretch their knowledge. Only for them was learning a priority. This is very telling, and I have to tell you too, as a college professor, and I see this with students sometimes, because I'm kind of old school with the papers. I love to read their writing. I love working with young adults in general. They're just so amazing. But I love to read what they write, and I'm kind of old school, and I write all over their papers. And I would say the majority do read the feedback, which I can tell by the next essay, right? Because it's different, format wise, everything. I can tell the ones who they're so excited to learn and make the changes. And then I can also tell the handful, especially now with these electronic, learning management systems, they can just go in and see what their grade is. And I can tell when a student just zips in, checks their grade and zips out and does not even look at all the notes there. Again, it's usually very much a minority. And there's just quite a difference in the thought process, which also often becomes, rather apparent in the classroom as well. Another interesting tidbit, and specifically in the academic context, though it can absolutely carry over into, other aspects, areas of life, Carol Dweck found that, some students with a fixed mindset would also avoid a challenge. Because, let's just say, let's say it's a college situation and a professor is just known for being a real badass, one of those who states on day one, no one gets an A from me kind of person. And let's say there's a student with a 4.0, and his 4.0 is super important to him. Okay. And even though he would love to take this class, this this class is in his major. And they'll say this professor is demanding, but also known as being stellar, like, just this amazing professor. He's just a badass. The fixed mindset college student like that is going to weigh out, is it worth risking my 4.0 to take this awesome class that I really love to take? Is that worth it? And will actually avoid taking the awesome class for fear that they might not have the 4.0, because they got to hold up to that. This is what people expect. I've been told I'm smart. I'm the intelligent one or whatever. And I believe this myself now. And this will, kind of overturn my belief system if, God forbid, I got, a B minus. And I'm realizing now that that example I just kind of rattled off to all of you is actually real. It came out of the vault somewhere. My college roommate, who is absolutely brilliant and also happens to be a wonderful person, and when back in college at St. Mike's, she had a 4.0, and she was an English major, and she loved Shakespeare, still does, absolutely loves Shakespeare, and the professor at St. Mike's was one of those. And again, it was a bittersweet thing because he had a great reputation for being a fantastic educator, teacher. And he was also a badass, very demanding, knew his stuff inside and out. And the kind of course you would want to have at the top of your list if you were kind of a Shakespeare nut like my roommate. Yet he was one of those that said, "You're not getting an A in here." Basically. I remember thinking, oh my gosh, my roommate, I was so proud of her. I mean, we don't think that way as college kids. I think we were juniors. Here she was up for the valedictorianship, and she wanted to take the class. She loved Shakespeare. She said, I don't care, and I'm taking it. And lo and behold, at least as far as I know, she got the first A ever from this guy. As far as I know, no one else ever got one that I heard of. And that's pretty amazing. And she came out on top because she would come home yapping away about, each and every class. He said this, he said that, and I didn't even know that, and I read this and I read that. She was absolutely had the best experience ever in this class. And, taking this kind of risk is definitely a growth mindset thing. Someone with a fixed mindset is not only going to take a risk like this, but may even show some kind of avoidant behavior in this direction. Carol Dweck also found along the way in her research that with the younger kids, that sometimes students with the fixed mindset would also avoid a challenge, and when push came to shove, some of them would even cheat on whatever test it was, because in order to avoid the pain and injury of feeling like they hadn't fulfilled their potential or measured up, or not reinforcing this label of he's the smart one. Of course, when we're locked into these character personality traits as being permanent, we are also more apt to take things personally. So we can also see a potential, right? Because we're all wired differently, a potential relationship with what we spoke about in last week's episode. We discussed learned optimism. We can see kind of maybe a tie between the fixed mindset and somebody potentially having some pessimistic tendencies as well, right? Because for the person who's pessimistic, everything is personal, pervasive, and permanent. We also spoke about last week somebody who has a tendency towards pessimistic thinking. There's a much higher chance of also developing, depressed type thinking as well. And I think we can also see the link with somebody who's locked into a fixed mindset for the same reason, right? There's it's kind of the external, and like Loretta LaRoche did last time, kind of thinking, these external circumstances are all kind of, bundling up, kind of to get me, right? Like a kind of like a little bit of a universal conspiracy theory or something. So this personal, pervasive, and permanent, kind of theme for the pessimist also kind of gels with the fixed mindset. And I certainly think this is applicable to the current times we're in with this pandemic thing. With the fixed mindset, if we how we're filtering, it's because it's even easier with such strong external circumstances like this to kind of think um, that we're stuck with being furloughed, concerned about, not getting a job back and kind of making that personal, pervasive, and permanent. Even for, some of the big stuff like, the college students thinking, that I'm stuck. I got sent home this semester. That means I'm probably not going to go back next semester. Maybe might never go back. I'm stuck in virtual world, forever. It would also certainly be easy to kind of, bring this thinking in with the parenting thing, especially with, parents right now being totally, had the rug pulled out from under them, right? Cranking along at work, and all of a sudden you've lost your job, might lose your job, furloughed, have a date to go back, but it's in 3 months or whatever. And the school is closed, kids are home. Now they're learning online. They don't have their friends or their routines, and it just no control. And it would be very easy to not only get into pessimistic thinking, but to for the fixed mindset to really kind of just be very, very, very present in having us locked in, that we are stuck in trying to validate and uphold all these things we believed about ourselves, when that is now being challenged externally. We've got to pivot here. We've got to move and groove and try to work with what's going on around us, which has been a challenge for many people. And once again, no one is saying this is easy, especially in a pandemic. I mean, at 55 years old, I haven't experienced anything on this level in any kind of way. And I think we all kind of can agree that it's been huge and overwhelming. And by the same token, the growth mindset is ultra beneficial in this circumstance as well, because as hard as it is, disclaimer, no one's saying it's easy, as hard as it is, someone with a growth mindset is apt to have a lot more bounce back. Also, like when we talked about optimism in the last episode, a whole lot more bounce back. Doesn't mean it's easy, doesn't mean it can't completely suck at times, doesn't mean there's not a lot of loss. But the person with a growth mindset is going to be able not only to pivot, but also to learn from different things, learn from um, the loss of a job, potential loss of a job, getting really creative with changing a job. There's a lot of shifting going on. I'm in academia, and I've never seen so much change so fast in my life. And somebody with a growth mindset kind of gets, okay, it's kind of like in the ocean, right? We can't control the waves, but we can learn to surf and ride them. Somebody with a growth mindset is going to learn to surf over this thing and through this thing, because quite honestly, you know, the path of least resistance is the way to go through this. And as hard as it has been for parents, derailed with work and being home and trying to teach, basically homeschool, and that wasn't what anybody signed up for, to try to figure out how to teach kids online, how to provide structure for kids, how to get some kind of connection in place for their kids who miss their routine and their friends and birthday parties and being outside and the whole thing. The growth mindset here still makes all of that easier. Not easy, but easier. And um, seeing, kind of the bless and the mess, maybe some quality time spent with the kids. Maybe they're able to learn some things that they wouldn't have been able to learn while they were in school, and kind of, having this mindset of we can come out on top somehow here. Maybe not sure how just yet, but we can absolutely maybe learn something new, come out stronger, come out closer. There's definitely a way for us to come out on top. And later, I plan to do an episode on post-traumatic growth on its own. But for right now, this we can just kind of tie in the idea of this because we hear so much about post-traumatic stress, and not discounting any of that at all. That's really not my point in any way. Marty Seligman, however, father of positive psychology, and I adore him, way back when in the 70s, came up with, the idea of making a shift in general, especially with the whole counseling thing. Because way back in the 70s, it used to be, not that this throws in a little bit of this, but a kind of a search and destroy mission. The person walked in to get help. It was like zoom in, find what's wrong with them, label it, medicate it, and send them packing, right? And another disclaimer, not saying that there's a thing wrong with medication is absolutely beneficial. My point is that the focus was more on to fix what's missing rather than acknowledge what may need some work, what isn't going well for that person, and to get some strategies to help that person get themselves in a better place. And also to look at the person who maybe has experienced some big stress and maybe trauma to kind of hone in on the character strengths and the ways they may have grown from that bad experience. And Marty Seligman is the one kind of responsible for making this shift and kind of pioneering this whole idea of post-traumatic growth. So again, doesn't mean things to work on may involve therapy, may involve medication, may involve support groups. That's all fabulous. And we can still, shift the focus to what this person has done well, what's going well, what their strengths are. And this also has to do a whole lot with what we're talking about with growth mindset, also linked to optimism, and then also another future episode, resilience. These are all tied in together, and they all have to do with our own ability to bounce back. And just, sort of reiterating that I'm a huge fan of skills. All of this can be learned, despite what people have thought in the past about, it's the teachers of school of hard knocks. No question that we learn from adversity. Absolutely, spot on correct. And with this awareness of we have control to change is huge, because it gives us the autonomy that we want and need, which therefore leads to the control over our lives, which we want and need. So just knowing that we can become aware of our tendencies towards a fixed or growth mindset, and that we can make a shift if we choose, is just huge. It's absolutely huge. And once again, one of our other themes is, or really not so much a theme, I guess, is just to acknowledge that in life in general, things exist on a spectrum, right? Our ability to ski, to speak another language, gender, sexual orientation, whatever it is on a spectrum. Well, it's not different with fixed and growth mindsets either. It's not like, we land in one box or we land in another box and then we seal it up tightly, tape it, and that's where we live forever. No, we can be anywhere in the middle, just like being introverted or extroverted. It's not like you're one or the other. You can land in the middle. And there are also certain situations where we may be more inclined to be in a fixed mindset, and other situations where we may be more inclined to be in a growth mindset. So really, and this is one of our main themes, is awareness, right? Really to become aware of our mindset situation is really the biggest step in choosing to make a shift in that. We need to kind of be cognizant of when we're inclined to go one way or the other. And getting a grip on this and having a conversation with ourselves is a big step in the right direction. And on that note, this is a lovely, very smooth segue into what our next episode will be on next week, is bringing the mindset into, the fixed and growth mindset idea into the stress mindset, because a lot of people think stress is always a bad thing. And next week, we're going to talk about how we make a shift from the stress response to one that's a challenge response, and how important this dialogue is. Our words are so important, so important. And I hope some of you will tune in next week because, in some ways, this can really be life changing, to be truthful. I know it sounds big and huge, but really, when we make any cognitive change, it's big and huge because thoughts come first and feelings come second. So we change our thinking, the feelings follow and then behavior. So by changing our thoughts, we are literally changing our lives. And by becoming the boss of our brain is just so incredibly freeing and liberating. And this is how we create the life we love to live. This is Kimberly Quinn signing off from Northern Vermont. Have a mindful day.